1st and 2nd Kings. King Saul's heart turned away from God when he was defeated. David's heart was wholly for God even in his own failures. But Solomon's heart was halfway turned toward God. A day came when the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream and said, "Ask what you wish me to give you." Solomon did not request fame or prosperity, but he requested wisdom about how to rule. God granted him that request and also gave him more riches and honor than anyone in the world. The temple he built for God was spectacular. The kingdom was united, prosperous, and well known. God himself dwelt above the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies, behind the curtain in the temple. And God promised to be the God of Israel, and that they would be his people. But the people turned from following God, as Solomon's 700 wives and 300 concubines became a snare for him. He married women from outside Israel and began to worship their foreign gods. His heart turned toward the women and away from the one true God of Israel. And the people followed his example. So God tore the kingdom from him, and at his death divided it north and south. The northern part of the country was called Israel. This northern kingdom consisted of 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel and began its rule under Rehoboam, Solomon's son. For the next 300 years, these tribes were ruled by a series of kings, none of whom worshipped God. Each one seemed to be more idolatrous than the next. Eventually, in 722 BC, God sent judgment on Israel as Assyria attacked and conquered them. Meanwhile, down south in Judah, the 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin began their reign under Jeroboam. They continued down a similar path toward judgment because of idolatry. It just took them another 100 years or so to get there. Whereas there were no faithful kings in Israel, there were a few in Judah. By 586 BC, the people had become so idolatrous and morally corrupt that judgment came upon them from Babylon, where they were exiled for 70 years. The content of 1st and 2nd Kings is the history of the kingdom of Israel, united and then divided. Each king is listed, often with the age at which he ascended the throne and age at which he died or was dethroned. Always his faithfulness to God is recorded. The people built altars to foreign gods on hills and mountains and sacrificed things unclean and forbidden and abominable to God. They did not worship God or obey his commands. In all of this, God brought clear and stern warnings to his people, calling them to return to him. He did it by sending his word through prophets, men who spoke, "Thus saith the Lord." The first one recorded in 1 Kings is the prophet Elijah. Later follows his protege Elisha in 2 Kings. 1 Kings 16:30 says that a king in Israel, Ahab, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. It says he provoked God. And God sent Elijah, his spokesman, who began his ministry by announcing that there would be no rain for 3 years in Israel. And there was no rain in Israel for 3 years. A series of miracles and God's hand on Elijah are recorded as God confirms Elijah as his own and sends judgment on the priests of the foreign god Baal, as well as warning King Ahab. The death of Ahab marks the end of 1 Kings. Elijah transfers his ministry to Elisha and is taken up into heaven in a whirlwind as Elisha watches. Elisha received a double portion of God's grace, and it seems as if a double portion of miracles followed him as he ministered to the people of Judah. In all this, God's right to rule and to be worshipped, as well as his goodness and power, are proclaimed by the prophets into a land where God's name had once been revered. This is the job of all of God's prophets of the Bible, to remind the people of God's goodness and greatness and his call to holiness, reverence, and relationship with him. During the years that the northern kingdom was in moral and spiritual decline, God sent prophets to call the leaders and the people to repent, to return to a relationship of worship and reverence of God. These prophets' words are recorded in the books named after them, Amos and Hosea. The section of the Old Testament in which these books are found is referred to as the minor prophets. What they had to say was not minor, but the size of their writings is smaller than the 4 major prophets of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. We will examine each of these books.